Let's do it. Alrighty. All right, so I've had some fun. I've been researching TASC and looking at bios and mission statements and values, but I'd love to know in your own words, like what is TASC's mission and purpose and what the company does?
Yeah, I'd probably start up with the family first. So Patty and I got together and tried to formulate based on what we saw out of my father, who was a real entrepreneur, and it all focused on win, do good, and deliver peace of mind. So we kind of created that as our mission as a holding enterprise of the family. So whether we are liquidating some things and they're just sitting in investments, or we're creating companies, or we're giving money away, it's all about what can we do to win, do good, and peace of mind, and don't allow anyone to exist all on its own. They must remain together. So like a three-legged stool, because if you win at all costs with no doing good or delivering peace of mind, that's a very shallow existence. You're just a money. But you also can't just do good without winning, because it's the winning that creates the value to do good. So those are the things, and I'll leave this with you as far as why the family exists. You can take that, and it goes a little further into innovation and that piece. But for TASC, our mission is, and TASC is kind of the tree that all fruit falls from. It is the mothership of the enterprise. Its mission is to improve the health, wealth, and well-being of our customers, our employees, and our community. And it does it by making healthcare more affordable, education more attainable, and giving more impactful. Those are kind of our focus what areas.
Okay, so then, and you said it's kind of the tree where the fruit falls from. So then how are is the family and foundation intertwined and incorporated with TASC?
Yeah, so the Family Foundation, what we do is we fund the Family Foundation with proceeds from TASC.
Okay.
So if we were a public company or a bank, and let's say you paid a dividend to your shareholders, what Patty and I do is we take a shareholder dividend, but we don't take it to just make more money. We take a shareholder dividend and we put it in the foundation, and that money is used to give away from a charitable perspective. The foundation has its own mission, which is to go after disadvantaged populations, focusing on education as a key piece, basic needs as a key piece, and then we do some things with healthcare, which is why we lean in on carbon cancer, or like the Children's Hospital at UW.
Okay, so going back to when you started the Family Foundation, what was the motivation behind it, or what were the steps that led to starting the foundation?
So we started in roughly 2010. What was happening is our giving program was coming through TASC, like corporate giving. The dilemma is I had to do that in an environment that was solely related to the business, because it didn't make sense for a business to do corporate giving that had no connectivity. So a lot of times when a corporation gives, it's still doing good things, but it's trying to connect back to its brand. It's trying to create a presence, or maybe be strategic relative to the business. So in TASC case, when we give, we like strategic philanthropy, not just corporate philanthropy. So you're serving the business interest and you're serving the social interest. And if you can get the convergence of the two, so when you give, so it benefits society, but it also benefits the business. So it's not this, I don't know what's the word, altruistic, is that the right word? It's not really giving without no consideration of a return. A business tends to look for some kind of business return. The Family Foundation, that's where Patty and I wanted to give, where we didn't have to think about the business. We just wanted to give as a family and look at things that we felt were important, to do things that might have no payback for the business whatsoever. There might not be any connection. The only connectivity back to the business is the Family Foundation is named Dan and Patty Rashke, parentheses TASC, Family Foundation. So when you see a placard out there, it's related to TASC. If I could real quick, my PR director said, if you make the assumption that Rashke's will do good, and you make the assumption that TASC will do good, why not, whenever you go out there, put them both together so that people start to assimilate the two together? But we need to disconnect, because what if we don't own TASC? What if we liquidate at some point? What if we die and TASC goes into a public charity and it's given away, there might not even be a Rashke connection anymore. And we're totally cool with that, because we don't want like NPR saying, well, it's brought to you by the Carnegie Foundation. I mean, shit, the Carnegies, they made money in steel.
Yeah.
How many years ago was that? So we don't have a desire of having the Rashke, the name does not have to continue on. Our legacy in the name is in the kids.
Right.
It's not in the...
So that's what I was going to ask next. I
business.
saw that are on your board are your kids.
The foundation.
In the foundation. So what was the idea behind incorporating the kids into it as well?
Well, what's happening is we wanted our kids to be participants in the idea of giving, and we've always done that. So think of, as a young person, Tia would do and a lot of kids do this, they do a birthday party and they get gifts, but they're gifts for disadvantage, or we encourage her to volunteer and we would volunteer. So our volunteerism is roll it up, soup kitchen, more around the kids. When I don't have the kids with me, my volunteerism is more strategic and leadership and that type of stuff, because I think I can bring a greater value. So we instilled giving into the kids. The foundation is almost like a little teaching area for them to get better at giving money away. Because the future is this for TASC. TASC is a company. You can't put a whole company in a private foundation. That's illegal. So you can't do that. You can sell it and then put the cash in a private foundation. The problem is if I did that, if death comes along and we're forced to sell TASC like a fire sale, it could disrupt some of our employees and hurt them. It could hurt the value of the company because you're selling it quick. So what we did is we said, when we die, we're going to put TASC in a public charity, and the kids will be on the board, but they can't control it. Over here in the foundation, the family, they can control it and develop their skills of giving money away. Because the problem is TASC, the asset, is getting so large that if by the time we die, that asset could be $1 billion. Well, let's say you're making 5% on that. You got to give $50 million away, and you haven't even eaten the principal. So Patty and I are saying you got to give all of our assets away in a 20-year period. So that would mean if you've got to give away interest or your gains plus the principal at 1/20th, you're going to have to give $100 million away a year. Well, where's the talent to be able to give the money away?
Right.
That's a hell of a burden. So we didn't want to saddle our kids with that burden. So what we're going to do is develop their skills inside the family foundation. That public charity would have those two and others, and then they would steward that money into the community. But quite frankly, I got to be honest, it is more difficult for me to give money away than it is to make money. Because I know what the hell I'm doing when I'm making money. I don't know. I don't know how to judge a good investment when you're giving money. I mean, I know the need is there. I know we can help people, but some of these organizations are not ran very well, or there's all these silos. They're not collaborating, or you're putting money at something that is more of a Band-Aid, and you're not going after root cause issues.
And you don't necessarily see the investment payoff right away. Sometimes it's much later off as well.
Yeah. We like to do more, we'll do some capital investments and some program, but I love investing in things that are more pioneering, stuff that people are looking at trying to get to root cause. So instead of keep trying to support, let's say, our disabled population and our elderly population with caregivers and basic services, let's do that, but let's get ahead of it. So, well, what's the issue for elders? Well, most elders go into the next level of care because of either incontinence, falls, breaking of bones, adverse drug events, or dementia. Well, I can't do much about incontinence or dementia, but can we get ahead and help them so they don't fall and break a bone, or can we get ahead of the adverse drug events? So that would be more strategic, pioneer, and if you can change that, it's kind of like shelters. Let's not build more shelters, let's try to build more affordable housing. So I think our assets could go into those programs where maybe the payoff is over time and you can't see it. I know it's a long answer, but
no, very interesting. I think it's
okay.
So back in 2010, you said when you started the foundation, what does that process look like to start your own foundation? What kind of obstacles did you have to kind of hurdle over?
Well, it's a real learning experience. It's kind of a pain because you got to go to the IRS and you got to set up a 501c3 to make sure you're legitimate.
Okay.
And then there's rules when you run it. You got to account for it as a separate business. So now I got to have a separate checkbook, separate accounting. And then if I'm moving money in and out, I got to be really careful about how that money moves in and out. And that's why I think a lot of family foundations shouldn't even exist. There's a new thing out there called donor advised funds. So you might be familiar with like a community foundation, where people put money in a Madison Community Foundation, but I could put money in and say, I want it to be the Dan account. And then this is a Brad account, and this is an Allie account, and this is a Taylor account. That's called a donor advised fund. The beauty of it is when you do that, you have your own fund, but you don't have to deal with all the bureaucratic stuff. So a lot of these family foundations, they're out there, and you got people like me spending a lot of money paying an accountant or paying somebody to deal with the bureaucracy, the actual 501c3. The future, I think, is for not only people who are families, but even individuals to set up these donor advised funds that would sit within a public charity and let them deal with all the administrative stuff. In fact, in our delivery of services, we've created a series of accounts that run from an HR perspective that are for giving. So we run the federal government's whole giving program. So what happens is 150,000 employees, military and otherwise, they send money off of 42 payrolls to us, and we put it in a donor advised fund, and I account for Billy's money separate from Susie's, separate from Jimmy's, and then they allocate that money to go to the charities of choice. So we do that for the largest employer in the land, and what we can do in the future is in there, you could create a crisis fund, you could create a scholarship fund, you could create an employer donor advised fund, and you could also continue to have these individual accounts all exist in one charity called a donor advised fund, and then it all can be administered with what TASC does with the universal benefit account system. I know it's another long answer.
Yeah, no, the possibilities are kind of limitless within it.
So we're making a huge bet here on the universal benefit account. We probably all in between that and the company in New York that's the debit card, right? We probably put 3 to 4 years in it, and I'm guessing somewhere between $30 and $40 million in it. And this thing's either going to work or it's not.
It's one of those risk-seeking events.
It's a big one, but the thinking is, are we truly bettering people's lives if we keep doing things the same old way, where you have like healthcare in a silo, education in a silo, giving in a silo? When you think of HR, when I'm looking at you as my employees, I should be delivering to you kind of an ecosystem that bends to your needs. I mean, if you're young and single, don't have daycare, then you don't need a daycare account, but you'd sure love to do this giving account. Or maybe you want the tuition reimbursement or student loan reimbursement. You don't have to worry with a scholarship there as much, but other people do. So that's what the universal benefit account. So that's probably our biggest entrepreneurial endeavor in the history of the organization.
Okay.
Another long answer.
No, you're good.
Okay.
One thing we talk a lot about in class is we try to define what an entrepreneur is. So I'm interested to hear what your perspective is on your definition of an entrepreneur.
Someone who perceives a need or a want, and that is perceived by the entrepreneur, and knowing that the need or the want by the individual, the entity, or the market is also perceived or real. So they're going to go in and say there is a perceived or real need or want, and they see it, they perceive it to exist, and they believe that they have the capability to fulfill that. And whether that capability is smarts, could be, or the ability to create the right connections, or the ability to resource it. I was never really good at the resourcing. A lot of your, like the other gentleman, Weekland, is it, that was at our table? Can't think of Brian.
Yes,
Brian.
yes.
He's a serial entrepreneur.
Okay.
He's really good at resourcing. He raises money from other people, makes connection that. But he always looks at what is that need or want that someone is perceiving or it's real that he goes after. When we did it, we didn't have other resources. We were never good at. We bootstrapped it and put our own money in. What I think is another ingredient to an entrepreneur, that's probably where I think I exist, is the charge pork chop hill. I will charge that hill to make that happen at damn near all costs. And that happened with my father in this company, which is why we almost went under a couple times. And that's why I think to be a real entrepreneur, when you amass wealth or a standard of living, you have to almost be willing to piss it all away. Now that's difficult. You can be smart with it, but I think that entrepreneur, number one, if I go back, they have to be able to perceive a real or perceived need or want, and they have to feel like they got enough pieces to be able to solve that, and that they're capable of pulling the other pieces together. And then the last one is, go get it. You got to get it like you want it. That's my belief. I don't know, do you want a different perspective?
Yeah, I would love to. What are your guys' perspective on that?
That's kind of spot on with the way I think of it. I think for a long time, thinking about just the word entrepreneurship, you think of someone who started a company or a business owner. And I think that there are a few different schools of thought on that, but it has been shifting over the past decade or so into a new kind of entrepreneurship. Is more of a mindset, an attitude and a skill set than it is like being a business owner, starting a company. I think it's, someone who's willing to tackle complex problems and someone who's innovative. It's hard to slap a definition on it, but I think in sort of similar to what Dan was saying, where it's more about how you operate, the way you think about things, and your willingness to go after and get it, than it is about, I think that entrepreneurs exist inside of organizations even without a title or a label. It's people who are like, I thought of this idea, I want to start this project, I'm going to get after it. But it doesn't necessarily have to be your own separate entity, your own company, things like that.
Yeah, I would say you have to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. So you have to know, like, nothing is certain, be okay with the uncertainty and just keep going, always plugging ahead. And you think your path is like this, you're like, oh, I can see it. But you're gonna go all over the place, and being okay with that. And then always moving forward. Like, just keep always having that perseverance to move forward, because there are times where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing and this is not right. But knowing that too, knowing when you're like, I don't know, and what you can do to get it a step forward. Like, it might be your knowledge, it might be resources, it might be wherever, but always tapping into that and being okay with the uncertainty.
One of the terms that we go over is like, you might remember this, like a fixed mindset and a growth mindset.
Oh, yeah.
So like growth mindset is seeing struggles or obstacles kind of as opportunities to continue to push forward and go get it.
Yeah.
So like another way that we in class talk about entrepreneurship is like someone who's having problems and kind of unknown problems, and just the growth mindset to continue to search for a solution. So I guess the question
Problem would be synonymous with need.
Need, yeah, problem or need. Is, do you have any examples of when, or like real life examples of when you needed that growth mindset within, whether it was foundation or TASC, of continuing to try to push forward? You talked about when it almost went under a couple times. I'm sure those are probably examples. But when that growth mindset and kind of an entrepreneurial mindset was needed.
Yeah, I'd like to go back, if I could, just for a second. Certainty was a good call out. It's almost like tricking your brain to thinking you have certainty when you don't have certainty.
Okay.
Because to be an entrepreneur, you must have a very creative approach, problem-solving approach. And to do that, you have to have dopamine pumping. And most people, you'll get a pumping if their status is high and they have total autonomy. Entrepreneurs have total autonomy. But certainty, they need certainty too. Most people are so bent on certainty that if you don't have certainty, the cortisol starts pumping and they start contracting, and it's fear, and it's this. It's almost like tricking your brain, to Allie's point, and what uncertainty? I mean, there's certainty in uncertainty. That's what I love about this. You have to have that mindset. And then going back here real quick, I agree with Taylor. That's why this new term, intrapreneur, came up. Because it's like an entrepreneur inside a business. Okay. Because I don't really think I am an entrepreneur. I believe my father was a true entrepreneur because he created a business. And you can say, well, you created businesses, Dan. Well, yeah, but I just took the fruit from the tree that he created. Right. So I actually consider myself more of an intrapreneur, or what would be like an entrepreneur in residence type of thing. But to go back to your question, to try to pick an example, there's a ton of them. The one that was really early on where I did jointly with my father was there in HR, corporations were able to give their employees a chance to set money aside for medical expenses pre-tax. It's called a flexible spending account. And they benefit and the corporation benefits. Because we grew up on the farm and we knew these farmers are struggling with the high cost of healthcare, we tried to take that concept into the farm. And it failed because a typical farm had no employee. It was Frank Farmer, the sole proprietor, and that was it. And he had a wife, and they farmed the farm. Well, what out of it came is we says, well, if we need an employee, why don't we make the farm wife an employee? And then we said, if you make her an employee, well, companies have been giving healthcare benefits to employees for years, since post-World War II. 1954, there was Internal Revenue Code that said you could do it. So you said, well, why aren't they doing it? So what we found is nobody knew that you could actually employ a spouse, where there's actually people believing, well, wait a minute, you can't employ your spouse, that's not legitimate. Wait a minute. My wife is getting on the tractor, plowing the field, milking the cows. She's working, providing a legitimate, necessary business. So what we did is we said, okay, we're going to employ her, pay her a small amount of cash wage, and then we're going to give her benefits. The benefits would be pay her health insurance for her husband, and the kids. What happened to that is it moved all those expenses from the personal tax return to the business tax return. Right now, we save those people $5,000 a year on average. $5,000. Back when we did it in the late 80s, we were saving them $1,200. But that is hard, cold cash that was helping that farmer survive. So it was almost like we took what was working over here and we went to Allie's point into this area of unknown, but the unknown is, well, why can't they have it? Well, the rules didn't work. So we just changed these rules over here to fit. And once we did that, that became huge for our organization. That was the thing that actually brought us out of the going under. Because we were spread too thin. We were selling insurance. We were trying to create an insurance plan. We were doing the flexible spending account administration, and we were dabbling in this. And when we got into trouble, we hunkered down and we looked at all of our things and says, okay, where are we going to bet? And we bet on the FSA because we had a steady kind of milk check coming. But we felt the big win was this product called AgriPlan BizPlan. So we hunkered down. We stopped paying everybody. We stopped paying the IRS. The only people we paid at that time was the phone bill and the rent. We didn't care about anything else. We said everything else, and we had a program and people would call trying to collect. We'd say, sorry, I'll have to have Dan get back to you while I was answering the phone. So I had to actually tell a small lie, so to speak, because we were 4 people, we went down to 3. We had 3 people, my father, I, and 1 person. So we had one piece of the business that was kind of giving us a little bit of steady milk check. I went on the unemployment line. My father was prepared to go down with the ship, but we put everything behind this one bet, AgriPlan BizPlan. And we went from unemployment line nearly going under in 1991 to a $4.5 million business in 1994. And I was named president and CEO in 95. And that just was the thing that shot us out. Now there were other things along the way, but that was probably the one that was most instrumental. Because we would have pretty much just put it all under, and then we would either got jobs.
Some risk involved with it, just a little bit.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's why Patty, people talk about Patty marrying me, if I could go there just a little bit. She's really sensitive, like this idea of a gold digger, a silver spoon, because she committed to me when I was sucked in canal.
Low on the unemployment line.
I knew she
you had a good one.
I had a good one.
Yep.
And she was willing to get in it, get her arms in.
Get dirty.
I had this good, wholesome woman that was willing to get in there and mix it up with me, that loved me, not for my money. I knew that.
It wasn't any.
It wasn't any.
There wasn't any.
I said, okay, I got somebody. Yeah. So,
That's funny. That's for sure going in there, right?
Well, you do need that, or
Yeah.
you need to be single where you don't have, I mean,
Right.
Because you could blow it all up, and then you got to decide. A part of entrepreneur, you got to decide what's important.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, next question.
Yeah. Okay. So just
You're
to
doing
wrap
great.
it up,
I'm
I want
good on
to.
time. I just don't want to.
No, you're good. You're good. I got nothing.
This is fun for me.
I want to go back to the comment you made about an intrapreneur. So you said you kind of see yourself more as an entrepreneur.
And I think that's what Taylor was talking about. I don't know if it's a real name or whatever from that standpoint in the world out there. I've heard it. Yeah. Because and if you want, that's the family. This is the company's mission, vision, values. The mission is solid. The values are solid. The vision might move. But I.
Just wanted to see how much time you want. I can
What do you
hold
think?
it.
10 minutes? 10, 15?
Sure.
Yeah, we're perfectly okay. So what we're trying to do, and we actually use Allie's mom, can I say mom?
Yeah.
I guess. Lori Cross has helped us in some innovation, but so this would be like an innovational functional work design on how we innovate in the company from a process standpoint. But then we want to create these innovation labs, and then it's really using this is a Doblin table of innovation. It's like taking different elements, like the customer experience product offering in the business, and you're just mixing elements. So think of like a lab. You're just getting in a lab and trying to change the different elements. So if you want this just to refer to, these are some concepts. But what we're trying to do as a company is actually foster these innovation labs or these entrepreneurial labs, which is why we have positions of entrepreneur in residence. So what these two are trying to do is they're taking different pieces of what we do know and trying to plow in and get all those uncertainties, kind of, not all, but a lot of them figured out and unknown, to see, can we create a new experience either by a new company, that's where he's working at, can we take what we're doing, create a new company, and go supply our competitors. So instead of being, everything we do is only for us and I compete against the competitors, why don't I take it and put it in another company and serve my competitors and truly be true to our mission of improving the health, wealth, and well-being. And that wealth and well-being shouldn't be just ours. We should share it. That's what he's working on. What Allie's working on is taking these benefit accounts, and if I help people save for healthcare and then spend their healthcare dollars, if they get in a bind, can I help them borrow for healthcare? So she's going after that. So you might find that this entrepreneur creates a new product or a new feature. It isn't even a new company. And then the entrepreneur might create a new company. Now the question is, what do you call that? An entrepreneur, an intrapreneur? Quite frankly, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's a label. We should be anchoring to what are we trying to do? And I would go back to, we believe we create a hypothesis, like a lab does, that there is a real or perceived need or want, and then do we think we have the different elements that we can pull together to execute on that? In fact, a lot of what they do, we might find that we can find something that it's good, we don't think we're the best ones to execute. I'd have no problem giving it to somebody else. Let them take all the thought and knowledge. If it's good for society, let them run with it. Now, we might say if it's really valuable, we might want to get a consideration for it, but that's where the giving comes in. What's wrong with giving away some of this stuff? It could be part of the philanthropic mindset, as long as it's being used for good from that standpoint. You dig, kind of?
Awesome. I dig, yeah. That's
kinda,
really all I got.
You guys are?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's really all I got.
And you did your homework on it.
I did my homework. Yeah, I've been...
And John Eckert, he took a sabbatical, but he's in the computer science. He's actually now trying to create artificial intelligence to take all your transcripts and all your background when you come into the school. He's trying to identify which students have the propensity or the likelihood to be entrepreneurial mindset. And then they're going to recruit them in to the entrepreneurial business side of the curriculum. So he's trying to solve that. He's on one of my data committees. I'm using him to help us figure out how we can use artificial intelligence off of all this data and start doing predictive indicators of future behavior. And it's really fascinating what he's doing. I don't know. I don't know. He's mapping to people who have propensity. Well, take me. If I'm one data point, but I scored lesser on certain courses than others. I did not complete school. I was working while in school. There could be a whole bunch of things, that might tell you. Maybe athletic, the idea of the competitive nature, because that's a little bit odd. You got to stick your nose, talk about uncertainty. you got to get out there sometimes and put yourself in a position. You don't know how the darn play is going to work. You kind of have a concept of it, but you just got to put your nose in there. So it's fascinating. It'd be like all these kids are coming back in the day when you used to register, and they used to watch for these tall farm kids, like Fred Robertson, our board member, and they would recruit them for rowing.
Yeah, that's
right.
In high school, my whole entire basketball team got a letter from Wisconsin Rowing.
Yeah.
And we walked in and they all had letters, and I was the only one who didn't, and I was committed at the time. And like we all thought it was like a joke, like Coach Guard was just messing around with our team, and like, oh no, it's all rowing.
Yeah, they're looking for
the letter.
6'3". It was like everyone in my high school that was over 6'3" got a rowing letter.
The letter literally said like, we're writing this because you're over 6 foot, you like your body, and they're like, all right, well.
So they're looking at, so they know that characteristic serves them well.
Yeah.
And they might see other things in them, farm kids, not fearful of the water, I don't know. So what they're doing here is they're trying to go across some of the information about, like, if you were on your essay, you might have said some things, or your extracurricular, you're in certain kind of clubs. They might be indicators of people gravitating toward certain things. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
It'd
there's
be
so much
interesting.
data out there, even like what you like on Facebook or what you everything like that.
Right, like search it.
I think as soon as you figure out how much data is out there.